Hello, and welcome back to our latest episode of Beyond the Numbers McKissock Appraisal. Today, our guest is Jordan P. Morgan. And I met Jordan when I was teaching a class in North Carolina this past spring. And it was a USPAP class. So, always lots of excitement. And in the classroom, Jordan stood out. He was bright, well-spoken, intelligent, had a great background. And it was shocking to me when I found out when we were talking on our first break that Jordan was a trainee. He hadn't even been in the appraisal profession for a long time. So seeing a new trainee coming into our profession, I wanted to get his background. I wanted to learn about him and what brought him to the appraisal profession. When he sent me his background, wow, Jordan, you've done a lot. He's been in financial services, process improvement, business and commercial lending, tax prep and planning, and he's even studying for his securities industry essentials license. All that added to, he's getting ready to start a term on the Young Bankers Advisory Council in North Carolina. I mean, that's a lot you have going on, Jordan. Tell us any more you want to add to my brief bio about you.
No, professionally, I think you've covered everything for the moment until I figure out what the next challenge is.
So my first question for you, you've done so much. You're involved in so many different parts of finance, lending, all those kinds of things. Why appraisal? What drew you to appraisal?
I've always had an interest in real estate, and as my interest kind of matured, and my wife and I, started purchasing property for ourselves, primary residences. Our conversations kind of shifted towards, getting to the point to where we will become, real estate investors as well. Looking in initially in the residential space, with the goal of growing into commercial real estate investment. It made sense to me to be able to gain insight into the valuation of the properties before actually investing in the properties. So
Sure.
that initially it started off as an interest that could help us from a personal standpoint, which will grow into long term goal of being our professional or my professional stance. And
Great.
eventually I'd like to grow into being a commercial appraiser, certified general appraiser. But again, the initial interest jumped off from want to be an investor and needing to know the valuation standpoint before investing in the property.
That's great. That's interesting to hear. I'm always interested to hear what draws people to the appraisal profession. So your ultimate goal is to be a certified general, you said? Do you plan
I
to
would like
get
to.
residential first, or do you plan to go straight to general?
Absolutely. I definitely want to cover all the bases as far as residential first, and then kind of scale up to certified general. I love the fact that appraisal work gives you the flexibility, to learn and grow at your pace. Gives you the flexibility to, kind of control your earnings as well. It's a level of entrepreneurship involved in that, and that's something that's always been of interest to me as well. So although my background over the last 18 years plus has been financial services. Many of the skills and additional certifications that I've obtained align with me being able to branch off, down the line and take the entrepreneurial route for financial services.
You have some tech background as well. What do you see technology wise? What can you bring to the profession?
My functional role in my day job, I work, I would say tech adjacent. So I work
Tech
on,
adjacent. I like it. I like that.
I work on technology projects. I wouldn't say that I'm the most tech savvy out of the group that I work with, but I really work to help organize the work, identify the business requirements for the various departments that we work with and various stakeholders, and bring those requirements to the table. Kind of try to map things out as far as how we can get those enhancements in place that they're requesting, and making sure that we're prioritizing the value add to the business and not just adding features for the sake of adding features.
Great. We all appreciate that. So, where do you stand right now on your trainee journey into the profession?
I'm still in trainee status. I'm looking to get sponsorship from a supervisor. The tough thing for me, I feel, has been that I do have a full time job that's going well for me, and so there's some hesitation by the supervisors to bring on someone who's only available in the evenings or on weekends because that's not traditionally the times they'd like to work, and
Sure,
I can't fault that. I understand that, but that has been, like, to me, the biggest obstacle is that I can't satisfy my field experience requirement, my experience hours in order to get fully licensed without having a supervisor who'll take me under their wing and be willing to accommodate my part-time availability. So that's
sure.
been a challenge.
That's going to be a unique match, but you do bring a lot to the table. So, what have you done when you're looking for a supervisor? What have you tried so far?
Well, so I start off obviously just searching in the area because I try. It's my goal to be partnered with someone who's within 30 minutes or so,
Sure.
30, maybe 45-minute commute at tops. But the assignments that I'm willing to work, maybe up to an hour radius. So for me, it's just, kind of going through the inventory of the directory and finding appraisers who are in the area who are listed as supervisors, and trying to make that connection with them, seeing if they, do you have any openings for trainees? And if so, hey, are you willing to to work with this part-time availability? And again,
Right.
that's been the roadblock, the biggest obstacle for me. So I don't think it's a lack of them seeing the potential as a in me as an appraiser, or viewing my prior experience of financial services. I don't think that's a downside at all, but really the my hours of availability. I think another roadblock to that also is that, there's the restriction of the supervisors only being able to have two trainees at a time. So, why would they why would they clog
Right.
up one of those slots for someone who's only available, evenings and weekends, even though I still feel that there's a ton of value that I could add to the industry.
Sure.
Yeah, I'm looking for someone who's willing to take that chance within my area,
Well,
so that
and
we can occasionally
that
have that face to face time.
those opportunities might open up a little more. One thing that would be attractive, with you as a trainee is as the market is slowing down right now and volumes for appraisers are going down in most areas. A supervisor typically wants to ensure that their trainee has enough work to make a living. In your situation, because you still have a full time job, then the need to ensure that the volume of work that you would need in order to stay afloat maybe isn't quite as heavy. So they could donate, or I don't say donate because they're going to be sharing their time with you. And maybe it would be more attractive now looking at evenings, weekend time, that it wouldn't be burdensome to someone taking you on as a new trainee. That's a possibility.
That's a great suggestion. I know there was recently a portal that was rolled out. I won't specify the organization, but there was a portal that was rolled out specifically for trainees and supervisors to be matched. So I've recently completed a profile there, and I'm looking to be matched. So I'll be providing additional details around my availability, and like I said, hopefully
That's
we can be
great.
matched. And thank you for that additional insight. I didn't even take that into consideration, so I
Yeah,
appreciate that.
it's definitely a possibility right now. So ideally, where do you see yourself in 5, maybe 10 years?
About 10 years, I would like to be on the next step of my journey, transitioning out of corporate America, hopefully, and really stepping out as a financial services entrepreneur. So we spoke around some of the other experiences I have as a tax professional, and the training that I have in business and commercial financing as well. But I see, appraisal as, the third leg to that tenant. I'm a huge proponent of a supporter of financial literacy, and I think that all of these kind of play into that. Having the understanding of property valuations that's what really piques my interest, is being able to leverage it not just to make a living, but also to be able to educate others and get to that point to where I can be a supervisor and bring additional appraisals on in the industry as well, training them how to do things the right way and really
Sure.
taking valuations seriously, because there's so many downstream impacts if it's not done the right way.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's frustrating, and God knows we need more supervisors. So we can get you in the profession, get you trained, get your certifications. Ultimately, to have you as one who can train others would be very valuable. Very valuable. So, other than finding a supervisor, what challenges have you seen as you were trying to enter the profession?
Um, being in North Carolina, I would say, and you were facilitating the class, so I think you observed it as well. I wouldn't say I was greeted with open arms with a lot of the other praises in the training session. Why, I don't know, but I feel like I got pretty cold shoulder the majority of the time that I was there, and so I definitely feel that there's opportunity there. I noticed that a lot of the trainees that were there were working under parents or aunts or
Right.
uncles who were already in the industry, and it seemed to be the greatest barrier to entry is that it's a closed club. It feels like in some ways, and in the early phases trying to step into it, and I really have a vision for what I'd like to do with my appraisal journey, but it seems like I really received quite a bit of a cold shoulder from the other appraisers and in attendance during the training.
Right.
So, um,
Yeah, those use PAP classes can be a challenge, and I'm sure you saw some of the challenges that we have as instructors when we are teaching use PAP. There are a lot of conversations right now that appraisers just don't want to entertain. They don't want to have, they don't want to talk about, but there are things that we as a profession need to talk about. And in the room in that particular class, for example, we had a lot of veteran appraisers who had a vast amount of knowledge. And the fact that they were not glad to see you, as not necessarily you, but to see new people coming into the profession with a background of substantial knowledge, that was a little disappointing, I will say. You know, I teach USPAP classes all over the country. And, it's refreshing to see trainees come in with new viewpoints that both of the parties have value. Our veteran appraisers and our new blood coming into the profession have immense value and different perspectives. And when we can open our minds to have some of the discussions that we need to have, I think our profession would definitely benefit from
mhm,
those discussions.
agree, absolutely.
So, in a perfect world, what do you think the industry could do to break down the barriers to entry?
One, I would say removing the requirement, or at least upping the requirement, or the limitation on the number of trainees that can be, work under a particular supervisor. I think two is a low number, and I understand that we want to make sure that the trainees are receiving the proper guidance and attention, and we don't want too much time split between. But to me, it seems like two is a very low number, especially if we're dealing with veteran appraisers, who've reached supervisor status, and they've gone through all this training over the years. So it seems like they would do a better job of handling multiple trainees underneath that. It seems like they should be able to divide their attention well enough to make sure that everyone is receiving sufficient coaching and feedback based on the work that they're doing. So I think that's one. The classroom portion of the training, I think that went very, very smooth for me. That was less of a concern. I think, though, providing more opportunities for engagement with other appraisers.
Mhm.
I had the opportunity to attend one of the conferences earlier this year, and it went very well. Made a lot of connections, had a lot of great conversations with the other attendees, and things like that. Were great. But whether it be something that could be done on a quarterly basis, just having more opportunities for trainees to engage with veteran appraisers, trainees to network with supervisors as well in the area and as well outside of the area, getting perspective from people out, across the country who are going through the similar journey as well. I think community is a big part of success.
Sure. And that's always an area where appraisers struggle is the networking piece. Primarily, we work from home. We don't interact with people other than our property contacts
Mhm.
and other than via email in a lot of scenarios. So I'm a big believer in getting people together face to face, even on a platform such as this, as
Yeah.
Zoom. We're interacting with each other. And we ran a podcast, I'm sorry, not a podcast, a Pro Series webinar recently about finding a supervisor in today's market. And one of our panelists said that this platform, the video call kind of platform, is an area that we really could grow and that it could work. You may not be officing with your supervisor, but maybe you're in a format like this where one is sharing their screen and you're walking through the actual writing of the appraisal process.
Hmm.
That could
Absolutely.
be a great tool. Maybe somebody who, that 45-minute commute between your house and their office, maybe that could be increased to, you meet together once or twice a week, and then the rest of the time you're you're having a call such as this.
Hmm.
I think that's a great format we could look at. Also, in our webinar last week, one of the panelists said, being an appraiser is like being born into royalty. And you hit that when you were talking about the people in our class, the other trainees. There was, I believe, a husband and wife team. There were several parent child, relationships. I personally was trained by my brother. So if you don't have I guess, the luck of being born into an appraisal family, bridging that gap, jumping in full force to meet a supervisor is greatly challenging.
Hmm.
Are you familiar with the new programs that will be coming out soon that give you that experience based on some module kind of training called PARIA? Are you familiar with PARIA?
I've heard of it. I haven't done a ton of work or diving into it, but I'm definitely open to that. I think that that would be great. Any resource that makes it easier, that barrier to entry lower. I'm for it. The appraisal industry is, like I said, it has a huge impact. Upstream, downstream, through financial services, left and right. So we need solid professionals in the industry, and I want to be one of them.
Yeah,
Um, you know, taken seriously in this as I have with all my other ventures and tasks that I've taken on in the past. So, yeah, I'm definitely open to anything that helps to lower those barriers. But keeping the standards high is there's still the
sure.
expectation to keep the standards of expectations high.
Yeah. That's a balance. You want to get quality folks in the profession, but you don't want to make it so easy that just anyone can get in.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. So, Jordan, when we were in class together in North Carolina, we were in USPAP and we were talking about Advisory Opinion 16, where we talk about fair housing and bias. And in the class, there was definitely some tension. Some of our appraisers really didn't feel that we needed to even broach this topic, broach this discussion at all. And in fact, were offended that we even were having the conversation. I'm a believer in that we have to have these conversations in order to make progress, in order to
Absolutely.
make change. And my motto is we can all do better. Tell me takeaways that you had from the class itself and just the issue in general.
Um, well, speaking on the issue in general, I think it was a great addition to USPAP, in my opinion. I think it was necessary. I think that I feel that it was fact based. on research that have been previously performed several times over. We've seen articles about appraisal bias in the past and the downstream impacts of it. So to bring that to light and include that as part of the use PAP for the broader appraisal audience and community, I felt was something that should be discussed. But to your point, there were a lot of attendees in the training who didn't even want to go there. They felt that
Right.
it was a personal attack on their profession, on the way that they perform their evaluations, and it was less of that and just really about providing the details provided in the data, showing that everyone has the opportunity to take a closer look and make sure that the valuations are being done, thoroughly and accurately and fairly across
Right.
the board. I think the biggest issue was, honing in on zip code specific discrepancies and variances and, kind of some of those double blind analysis situations where they sent a second appraiser out to the property and with one homeowner representing himself one way and another homeowner representing himself another and seeing how the differences in those values came back. But it wasn't a conversation that many wanted to entertain at all or even open the door to. So and that you could kind of see the emotion coming up and
Right.
I would say that I'd hate to say it, but the majority of the class. And then to take it a step further, when we broke out into the group assignments later that day, we broke for lunch and we came back and we were doing the group projects.
Right.
Um, no one wanted to make eye contact with me to kind of invite me over and be part of their group. So I felt it was my obligation to go to the group that had the most to say,
Right.
the most objection to the topic and involve myself in that breakout group, just so they could get a bit more understanding and perspective from a trainee, African American male trying to step into the industry. Like, hey, I'm qualified. I am still new to this profession, but I have a lot of other skill sets that help me, that give me a solid foundation in this industry, and I feel like it'd be a huge addition to it. So my hope is that some of the conversations that we had during the breakout sessions and working through those assignments is that they were able to see that there's a lot of top talent out here,
Right.
regardless of where you're coming from or your opinion on appraisal bias. But the conversation has to be had. It's a real thing,
Right.
and the biggest thing is open our eyes to the opportunity to level set the values and make sure that we're really looking at it through the appropriate lenses, in my opinion.
I agree 100%. And it is disappointing when I'm teaching USPAP and we're trying to have discussions and to see students, I can read in their faces when they've shut down and they're not hearing what I'm trying to discuss. And I've tried really hard to get to the root. I'm not ever going to answer the question, but to find out why this discussion is so triggering for some appraisers in general. And I think it comes back to, the basic foundation of being an appraiser is you are
Mhm.
unbiased, impartial, and objective.
Right.
So, those are our three tenets. And when one of those is challenged, it's very uncomfortable. It's a very uncomfortable discussion to have. And it creates a lot of emotion. In a recent conference I was at, someone used this phrase: we are creating biased appraisals, not that we have biased appraisers.
Mm.
That the way our methodology works and some of the ways we create our appraisal reports, the report may have some bias. That's not saying that the appraiser themselves is intentionally acting with
Correct.
bias.
Correct.
And some of the studies that show, with hundreds of thousands of data points, that appraisers tend to be more conservative in zip codes that are predominantly people of color. That's a pretty big statement. Is that the complete answer to the problem? I don't know. But I need to find a way that we can have this conversation more comfortably, more openly with appraisers in general. What what do you think about that?
I definitely think the conversation, needs to be tackled head on. Tiptoeing around it doesn't do anybody justice.
Right.
It is an uncomfortable conversation, but we're all adults. We should get comfortable with the uncomfortable, or
Right.
at least get used to having those uncomfortable conversations. We have clients who will order an appraiser and they may see the valuation come back lower than expected and, want additional details on that. And that's something that, we have to explain to, we have to be able to justify that in the work report, but these are being able to speak through those tough conversations is something that I feel is absolutely necessary and figuring out, why is there such a discrepancy in property values when we're looking at predominantly minority zip codes. Um, is it something that what is it?
Right.
Driving down to the root cause, eh, do we need to get more representation from individuals who are reflective of the zip codes. Is it an instance where it's just additional training or factors that need to be considered when appraisers are evaluating properties outside of their normal area of expertise, I would say. We say property types, commercial and residential, but as we know, there are huge variances as we look at each different market and sub-market as well. So does this appraiser have experience in a particular market or sub-market? Are
Right.
we just, assigning them out based on, how close they are to the subject property? Or do they, really have a history of, appraising properties in this area? And is there a history of undervaluation? I think that was a great enhancement by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac as well. The undervaluation alert. So
Right.
I think that that's something that could be a huge help in identifying, possible root causes as well. So obviously with anything it'll take a little while for that data to be useful. We have to have a solid sample size in order for any data to be valuable. So it'll be a little while before that data is available. But I think that's a step in the right direction.
When you talk about the undervaluation alert, tell me a little more what you mean by that.
So there was a recent enhancement to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, and I'm hoping that FHA is looking into it as well. But so an alert will go out, if the underwriters notice or a flag will go out, an alert will notify the appraisers if the appraisal came in under a certain threshold for the normal value for the property area, the property type. It's like, hey, this looks a little off. Can you give us additional details and to help justify the valuation? And I think that that's a great step to and again, because I work in financial service, I work in banking. I guess my opinion on this may be a little different than the average appraiser, because most people will say, "Hey, you're just second guessing my work. You're making me go back and do double work, things
Right.
like that. I don't have time for this." But to me, just making sure the integrity of the appraisal reports is accurate and justified, I think it was a great step.
Um, I think also important to talk about in the situation you were just describing is appraisers frequently operate somewhat out of fear when they're appraising a property, and they tend to err on the side of being overly conservative in some situations when they can't find a solid basis for making or not making an adjustment. They seem to kind of act. Uh, in my days at the bank, we called it analysis paralysis, where
Yes,
you were locked in and you were afraid to make a decision because you weren't quite sure what the right decision was. There's so much technology we have available to us today. Uh,
absolutely.
there's some interesting things that I've done in courses related to analyzing historical data in order to extract out possible adjustments just because you don't have a sale right now, maybe with a pool, doesn't mean historically you can't find how the market reacted, for
Hmm.
example, to a pool. Are you familiar with any new technology kind of things you'd like to discuss?
I wouldn't say new technology, but the hybrid model, I think is something that can be effective. Combining desktop appraisals with actually field inspection. I think that's great. Having access to the GIS systems,
Oh,
many
yeah.
places I would say that's a huge help. Now, not every area of the country has the property maps and details digitized in GIS format, but for the territories and the areas that do. I mean, it's a great resource to look up sales history in the area. Even zooming in close to a specific property, the surrounding neighborhoods and all. You can see the sales history, leveraging some of the details that are available through MLS as well. So these are just what I consider to be common technology features that are available to us to help us compare the data for the valuation. So I think that those are helpful, and I'm sure that there are extra tools as a trainee that I'm not aware of that I could be exposed to, and that would be very helpful, and which I'm all for. But I don't think that just a physical site inspection is enough. I think that additional due diligence should always be performed to help solidify any valuation that's being shared.
Right.
Opinion,
I agree completely. I think over time, I mean, we've never had as much data available to us as we do now.
yes.
Now, you, from a financial background, know that not all data is good data. Some of it is better than others. And
Mhm.
good quality data is a
Absolutely.
whole different category. I think as a profession right now, we have access to a lot of information that makes us pretty effective from right here, from our desk. We
Absolutely.
can, in not all areas, but most areas, we can walk the street around a property virtually. I know some appraisers are very against the bifurcated or hybrid desktop appraisal products, but I think they have their place lending wise. How do you feel about the whole desktop model? You gave us a little bit of insight. How do you really feel, Jordan?
I stand on that. I think yeah, I would never go one in my opinion, I would never lean 100% on one method, 100% desktop, 100% field of inspection. But to me, I feel that using the combination of them, as many data sources as possible, I feel is the best way to confirm and solidify the value, the opinion of value. So whether that be desktop, whether that be field inspection, whether that be going to the GIS records, whether that be leveraging your network of real estate agents in the area and asking their opinion of value based on what they're seeing in industry trends. I think that the combination of those helps to solidify the opinion of value. And to me, just I just feel it's tricky leaning on one
Right,
source too heavily.
right. And when I used to do residential appraisals, field inspections, I would always have a conversation with the homeowner as I was leaving. They would say, okay, what is it worth? And I would say very clearly, now this inspection is a very, very small part of the appraisal process. Most of the work is done back at my desk. And it wasn't until recently that I remembered that conversation. And I thought, well, isn't that extremely relevant when we're talking about the desktop appraisal product? And that outsourcing, as long as you're outsourcing to a qualified property data collector, the majority of the work on the appraisal is done right here in my chair at my desk.
Mhm.
So if I can get that inspection piece from someone who is qualified to do so, I can be very effective from my desk. And I think appraisers are somewhat afraid of that. We don't like to give up control very often, and outsourcing that inspection piece is giving up a piece of the control
Yeah,
related to our appraisal process. But you think that we can do that effectively?
I do. I think it's a balancing act, obviously. But to your point, there's so much data that's available to us that it would, it's a disservice for us not to acknowledge and embrace that data, and leverage that to help us form our opinion of value.
I think that's a great mindset. We can always grow, change, and the appraisal process has to continue to develop. We can't keep doing things the way we've always done them and expect to get ahead.
Yeah,
So, well, Jordan, it's been a wonderful conversation with you. I am so happy to see that you are still on your track to enter the appraisal profession. We need more young people of color, bright minds. You would be a great asset to the profession overall.
I
And
appreciate
I'm happy to have met you at my time in North Carolina. Glad to have you in class. Glad that you could come on the podcast with us today.
it. For having me, Julie. I appreciate it.
Any final words?
I'm available, available for work. Interested. This is definitely grown into a passion of mine. I take financial services, appraisal, everything seriously. It's a great space to be in. Even with the change in rate environments and all, there's still a ton of opportunities to engage and just remain active as a part of the appraisal community. So look forward to making additional connections. Julie, I appreciate you having me on, and presenting so many important topics of discussion today. Thank you.
Great to have you, Jordan. Thank you all for listening. This is Julie Mollendorp with Beyond the Numbers with McKissock Appraisal. Thanks for spending some time with us.